Amid the devastating war raging in the country, much of Syria's cultural heritage has been destroyed and looted, as we've been reporting over the last few months to you. Islamic State's occupied territory containing some of the richest archaeological treasures on earth. There have been reports that the terrorist group's been looting ancient sites across Syria on an industrial scale. Then they go on to sell many of these cultural artifacts to fund their fight, some of which have been smuggled into Western countries, finding their way eventually into public institutions, museums and private collections. Well, to prevent illegal exports and raise public awareness, the International Council of Museums now has released a list of Syrian cultural objects at risk. And that list includes examples of objects that are likely to be illegally sold eventually, and encourages museums not to buy them. For instance, the list contains this limestone bust. Created in the 3rd century AD and typical for Palmyra. Another piece of art, this antique silver coin with Cleopatra on it, created in the period from approximately 40 years BC in Latakia. So many treasures there. Well, experts say there are unwritten rules when it comes to trading looted artifacts like that. They say antiquities without any documentation are likely to appear, well, I guess, obviously much cheaper on the black market. The more hands an object passes through, though, the more expensive it does become. An initial price might differ from the final one by as much as 100 times when it finally gets to its final owner. RT's Anastasia Churka next reports from London. That's a place where some of this looted art has been surfacing.
Antiques are big business in the British capital, with shops like this around every corner. So little surprise that blood-stained treasures from war-torn regions of the world make it to this market. With little paper trail left behind, pieces are brought in from Syria and sold here, with supply easily meeting demand. Experts say the scale of the problem is much wider than most might assume, with ISIS not just destroying historic sites, but also making a serious profit off the trade. We're meeting with an archaeologist to find out exactly what is available on the market here in London. Looking at these pieces, how do you as an expert know that you can assume this is recent and this is from Syria?
It's like buying a car. Just by looking at it, you can tell what's a British car versus an American car. So it's kind of like the same idea. You look at the shape, you look at the insignias, the kind of diagnostic features that tell you where it potentially is from. So that's the first step. You know it's coming from regions in which ISIS is operating. The second step is the much harder step, which is when did it come here? That's hard to determine. There's little to no documentation in them. Most of them don't even say absolutely anything.
How do you think realistically do they make it here?
These cylinder seals are the ones I find the most interesting. These are cylinder seals from, again, Iraq and Syria. You can tell by the shape. So here you can, the figures, for instance, the kinds of designs that are on there, the way in which the designs are actually carved into the stones. Enough diagnostic features to know objects that are coming, that they are certainly coming from the region which ISIS controls. So these are the kinds of things that are going to be of high demand, and in terms of looting, because they have a lot of value for their size, and also of interest from the Western market. You could put them in a pocket, basically. It could be an amulet from, or a kind of necklace, as far as anyone's concerned in the customs. By the time it gets to here, it's too late, essentially. It's the chances of someone being seized, stopped, and prosecuted are almost zero. In the UK or anywhere in Europe, frankly. So the problem is really originating, the conflict zone, and if you can't stop it in the actual conflict zone, then it's basically too late. So you can see this is the mess that we have on our hands. The Met has something like 2.5 positions devoted to antiquities coming to the London region. Now, imagine London is one of the biggest markets in the world for antiquities, most likely. 2.5 people. Yeah, 2.5 positions. And we don't know how much ISIS is benefiting from these kinds of objects. We know they are benefiting, and we know it's coming to the West. That's indisputable. So whatever antiquities dealers tell us is just false. Now the question is what's the scale of it? And that's what we can't measure very easily. And this is just the legal stuff. This is the stuff we can find online. People basically don't know if they're funding ISIS or not. That's the bottom line. So that's the kind of scary thing, I think, is that we could be funding these groups without even knowing it.
Earlier this year, the UN Security Council put in place a ban on trading illegally obtained antiques from Syria and Iraq. But obviously no rules apply to ISIS. And with tracking the artifacts far from a priority for officials in countries where they end up, like the UK, the problem of death-stained antiques making it into Britain and elsewhere is yet to be efficiently addressed. Anastasia Churka, RT, London.